أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأفوض أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الأخيار المنتجبين وعلى جميع النبيين والمرسلين والشهداء والصالحين. His Eminence, our esteemed scholar Sayyid Fadi, respected brothers and sisters present with us and following us online, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Before we begin, let us recite Surah Al-Fatiha for all the oppressed around the world, beginning with a gentle Salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم والعن أعداءهم.
First and foremost, I would like to express my wholehearted gratitude and appreciation to each and every one of you for joining us this evening on the auspicious occasion, the birth anniversary of the noble and the exemplary lady Fatima Al-Zahra salamullahi alayha, the daughter of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alih, and the mother of our beloved Imams. I would like to extend my gratitude and appreciation to each and every member of this beautiful Quran Academy, named after our 8th Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, peace be upon him, who spend days and nights preparing these special programs for all of us, working together, sharing their skills, utilizing their talents, and making the events happen. And I would like to specify our respected brother and teacher, Ustad Haj Mustafa Ashrafi, for being one of the pioneers in opening and launching this center and facilitating these programs for all of us. Let's give everyone here, including those behind the scenes, whom I mentioned and perhaps those that I don't know about, another loud salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
Although Lady Fatima alayhi salam, as we all know, did not live a long life, surely she left a long-lasting legacy. And our presence today, like past years, since the onset of the message of Islam, including the journey of the Muslim community, including the followers of Ahlul Bayt across history, testify to the long-lasting legacy of Fatima. Who was Fatima? Is a question that takes us back to history. Who is Fatima is a question that empowers us to rediscover Fatima for our day and age today. How can we connect with her? How can we learn from her? How can we think like her? How can we feel like her? How can we talk like her? And most importantly, how can we be like her? We cannot just look at history and assume that because we know a few facts about her life that we can become like her. This is step one of knowing Fatima. Step two is to know ourselves. Who are we? Who are you? Who am I? What are my strengths? What are my skills? What are the gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me? Step number three. What is my community? In which day and age do I live? What are the problems of my community? What are the needs of my community? What are the issues of the youth? What are the challenges that families are facing in my community? Knowing Fatima, step number one. Step number two, knowing yourself. Step number three, knowing your community and time. The narrations tell us, historically, that Sayyidat Fatima Al-Zahra alayha salam lived for 18 years. Some narrations tell us that she lived for 21 years. Some narrations report that she lived for 25 years. Other narrations report that she lived for 27 years. These are facts, but what matters is how she lived her 18 years, if we go with this narration. Let's go back to the early days of Islam. When Fatima alayha salam was born, she was born in a society that looked at boys as the most powerful elements of a community, of a tribe. If you have many boys in your family, you're a strong tribe. And for this reason, they look down on girls and female infants. And you know the rest of the story, how they used to bury, not all of the Arabs, so that we are accurate and fair, but there was, to some extent, a culture that was prevalent amongst some communities in pre-Islamic Arabia, where they used to bury the newly born female baby alive, because the female baby would bring shame to the culture of that community that was so patriarchal. To the point that the Quran describes it very vividly and powerfully in saying that whenever a baby girl was born, the face of her father would be so dark and black out of shame. وجهه مسود وهو كظيم. These are the expressions that the Quran is giving us about that culture, to the point that some of these fathers would not want to go out and socialize with people in their community out of shame and embarrassment. And they had two options. If I keep my female baby girl alive, then I don't want to deal with her. I'll create a tent in another place, and I'll let the mother and the baby girl live in that tent. And some narrations tell us that some of these fathers would not even want to look at the baby girl, let alone the mother. They would put the food outside of the tent because they don't want to deal with this newly born baby. Look at how harsh that community was. And you may think, how did the message of Islam come about? What was the message and the mission of the Prophet ﷺ? These are the problems of that society. You see how we are beginning from the society. And then Fatima Al-Zahra is born. What does the Prophet ﷺ do? He carries her so close to her chest and he walks in the streets of Mecca, showing the whole society that this baby girl will become the lady who will transform that society upside down. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
It's a simple act of love and compassion. Sometimes you don't have to do big things in life. Sometimes a simple act of kindness, like the Prophet carrying his daughter and walking in the streets of Mecca with her in his arms, close to his chest, when everyone else would be wondering, what is this man doing? How is he not afraid of a culture that looks down on girls? The topic that I would like to address with you tonight is called the art of allyship. It's a topic that is being studied in sociology today. What is sociology? Sociology is a social science that studies human behavior and how people, their ideas, their interactions can shape the society that we all live in. So all these bad habits that some Arabs had in pre-Islamic Arabia towards the girls shaped how that society behaved. And so Fatima Al-Zahra salamullahi alayha was brought up in a family that had a mission and a message. So we need to know Fatima the message. We need to know Fatima the lesson. We need to know Fatima the cause. We need to know Fatima the future. Because in each and every one of us, there is the spirit of Fatima salamullahi alayha. She grew up in that society. The Prophet was an ally of Fatima who could have been a victim of that society, but he, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, wanted to show people that even my baby girl will be respected, recognized, inspired, empowered, developed, supported, given the safety and the upbringing and the nurture that she deserves, and I will show you how she will become the best example, not just for your society, but for every other society to come.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Before I give you examples from the life of Lady Fatima, what is allyship? There are three elements, and I would like you to pay attention and try and memorize them. The first element is privilege. The second element is self-awareness. And the third element is empathy. Allyship, in a nutshell, is when you support someone in your community who does not have a voice. Because of a privilege that you have, that they don't have. I'll give you a simple example, because I experienced this when I was a teenager myself. And some of you may relate to it. Our parents migrated to Australia, and English is not their first language. Most of our parents who migrated from Lebanon, from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, from India, from Iran, from Iraq, from different parts of the world. And they sacrificed their comfort and their wealth and their time and their pleasure so that we can have a good life and grow up in a good society like Australia. And we have to be grateful to them. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَشْكُرْ النَّاسِ لَمْ يَشْكُرِ اللَّهِ. So we have to be thankful towards our parents. Why am I mentioning this example? And please pay attention to it. And I'll link it back to Fatima and to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. when they migrated here, they did not have the privilege of speaking the English language. But when we were born as the second and third generation, we grew up, we went to schools here, and all of a sudden English became our first language. And we were speaking English fluently. But then we started growing up, we started becoming confident, we can communicate, and we look around and we see some of our parents, whether mothers or fathers, who did not have the opportunity to learn fluent language, English language, they needed our help. So sometimes you would go with your mother or your father to any place in the society that requires English-speaking Australian citizens. And maybe they knew how to speak a bit of English, but they needed your help. Because you had a privilege. Remember, allyship. First element is privilege. How will you help your parent in this situation? Let's say there is an electricity bill, and they call. Your mother was not understanding. There's nothing wrong. English is not their first speaking language. And then you help, you interpret, and you assist. You become an ally for someone who does not have the privilege that you have. Prophet Mohamed had a privilege. He was chosen to be the last prophet, and he was given a special message for all of humanity. When his daughter Fatima was born, the society in which the Prophet was living was not a kind society, it was a harsh society. But he used his privilege to protect Fatima so that she can grow up and be a source of change for this society. He would carry her, he would take her with him. He would not keep her at home because that society does not respect girls. This is the first step of change, my dear brothers and sisters, when we use our privilege to support those who are unfortunate, or those who are limited, or those who don't have the power and the influence and the talent that Allah gave us. Just like our parents were given privileges that we don't have, and they use these privileges to help us. We have that responsibility. How many of us have heard of Craig Foster? In the Australian context, who was a well-known Socceroos player since 2000. And he was a well-known SBS commentator. I remember back in the days when I was young, my early teenage years, we would wake up early in the morning just to watch the SBS coverage of the Champions League. They would broadcast the quarterfinals, the semi-finals, the grand finals. And we would watch this man who was a human rights advocate. Did you know that in 2012, there was a soccer player from Bahrain by the name of Hakim Al-Rubayyi. Hakim was accused of vandalism in Bahrain during that time when there was a movement, human rights, advocacy. So he was accused of vandalism. But the footage of the investigation showed, according to one report, that he was actually playing soccer. He had nothing to do with the vandalism. By the way, vandalism is when you damage public property, when you break something in public, usually intentionally. So he was innocent, but they accused him of that. So he left the country. Australia gave him refuge as an asylum seeker. He came here, he went on to his honeymoon in Thailand. Upon his marriage, they issued an arrest in his absence, and he was stuck in Bangkok, the capital city of Thailand. And he had no support, but there was one man from Australia by the name of Craig Foster, who said to the world, I will not let this soccer player who belongs to FIFA, the community that I came from as a professional soccer player, I will use my privilege, my popularity, my fame to protect him. Even though Craig Foster is not an Arab, Craig Foster is not a Muslim. Greg Foster has nothing to do with Bahrain. He lives in Australia. He could have said to himself and to his people, what should I do, with this person? Let me stay away from this headache. Fatima Al-Zahra alayhi salam begins with this legacy. Greg Foster said, no, I will make a campaign to support this young man who has no one around him. He's away from his family, he's away from his country. How can I help him? He started making a campaign on Twitter, which was known as Twitter back then. He hashtagged Tim Cahill and Sergio Ramos. And he said to them, I need your help. Please retweet so that we can get everyone on board to protect this young man. Because he was innocent. And then he traveled to Switzerland. He spoke to the FIFA committee. And he kept sending letters after letters until he won the case. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When the Australian society looked up to Greg Foster, who was able to bring back this Bahraini young soccer player and protect him from 10 years of imprisonment, they all looked up to him and said, this man can become the Prime Minister of our country one day because he stood up for human rights. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, this is the first element of privilege, the first element of allyship. Use your privilege. You may be a good Quran reciter. Everyone looks up to you. You have a beautiful voice. How do you support those who don't have a voice? How can you one day help someone in need? Through your connections and empower them to become successful. There are many examples of how Lady Fatima alayhi salam practiced her privilege during her time. I'll share with you one example. During her wedding night, I'm sure you've heard of this story. There was a young woman who did not have a dress. So Fatima Al-Zahra salamullahi alayha gifted her and donated her precious dress. You know what she is teaching us here? Pay attention to this example, my dear brothers and sisters. Fatima changed the whole society through this simple act of donation. What do we usually do when we give our donations? Let's start with clothes. You've heard of the Smith family. We usually give the clothes that we don't need anymore. The used clothes, the second-hand, low-quality clothes. We give them out. Take them, I don't need them. I'm not saying this is not good enough. But Fatima alayhi salam takes us to another level. She says to us, if you want to be a true follower of Ahlul Bayt, a true ally of Ahlul Bayt, challenge yourself in giving something that you love. Let's say you have a bike, or you have a PlayStation 5, or you have something very precious, a piece of gold, a necklace, and you know someone in your community is in need of that support. And if you give them that precious thing, it will change their life. Maybe someone's father has passed away and they're very stressed, they're very sad, they're heartbroken. What can you do to make their situation easier? Fatima alayhi salam donated her most precious dress on her wedding night. How will we donate our precious time and clothing, let alone our skills, to support our community? The second element is self-awareness. What are our biases? Yeah, I belong to this community, I'll only support my people. I only support my Lebanese people, I only support my Afghan people. These are called biases. I'll only support my Muslim Shia community. Fatima alayhi salam was for all of humanity. Like all of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, her father, is described in the Holy Quran. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. O Muhammad, you were sent to all the worlds, not just to your Muslim Arab community, to every single creature in the world. What are our biases? And I'll quickly finish off. So our biases are the things that we inherit from our environment that can sometimes make us not treat everyone equally and fairly. For example, Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam in the Quran, he had high self-awareness. When he was in prison and he walked out to interpret the dream of the king, he changed the whole society because Allah gave him a privilege, which is the power to interpret dreams. It was a special type of knowledge. Prophet Yusuf lived in ancient Egypt, which was not a society that believed in one God. But Prophet Yusuf was a muwahhid, he was a prophet of Allah. And his father was a chosen prophet of Allah. And his ancestors were noble messengers like Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, like Ishaq. Yusuf did not say to himself, oh, they imprisoned me because they put me in jail, because they don't believe in my religion, I'm not going to help them. He did not say this. He had a big picture. These are the chosen people of God. They don't think small, they think big. He walked up in the courtyard of the king. What did he say to the king? The Quran records this. قَالَ اجْعَلْنِي عَلَى خَزَائِنِ الْأَرْضِ إِنِّي حَفِيظٌ حَلِيمٌ. O king, make me the minister of the treasury, of finance. Make me the prime minister of the country. I will take care of the land. And he came up with an economic policy. He said to them, this dream of the king that no one was able to interpret with expertise and mastery, Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, Allah sent him to guide the community through his privilege and self-awareness. He said to them, our society will one day face a drought and we have to be prepared. Whatever resources we have from our land, we have to save for that time so that when the drought comes, we are prepared to survive and then build our economic flourishing from there. And this is how they succeeded. Self-awareness. How did Fatima Al-Zahra practice self-awareness? Salamullahi alayha. The Arabs, some of the Arabs during the time of the Prophet did not respect the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As our dear and esteemed brother Hussein beautifully mentioned in his introduction, they would call the Prophet with names that were not gentle, were not kind, were not nice. How did Fatima protect the Prophet? Through her self-awareness. When the Prophet would come back home, she would not call him by his name, because the Quran revealed to the Meccans, don't call the Prophet by his name, respect him by his title, because he is a messenger of God and he is there to help you. So she would not call him by his name. Even till the migration in Medina, she would call him Rasulullah, she would call him the Prophet, until the Prophet ﷺ says to Fatima one day, my beloved daughter, don't feel bad for calling me by my name or calling me my father, for this was not revealed to everyone, this was revealed to this particular group of people. But look at Fatima's self-awareness. She was aware that maybe if I call my father by his name, it would hurt him because no one is respecting him in society. Look at her self-awareness. So what is our self-awareness today? An example could be, if you have a friend who is not popular when you're around your friends and they talk but no one listens to them. Your self-awareness would be to make this friend feel heard and recognized in this circle. For example, if your other friends who are very popular, very cool, talkative, they speak a lot, they know how to talk, they know how to make jokes and make people laugh, you would, if your other friend would say something that others do not respect, you would actually stop everyone in that circle and say to them, you know, Fatima or Zainab or Jawad made a very good point about so and so. What do you think? So now you're redirecting the attention of those who did not value your other friend towards what that friend has said. And you're giving them the safety and the space in that situation and the power. This is self-awareness. Second element. Last element is empathy. What is empathy? Empathy has two elements. The first is to always try to consult and get the feedback and the ideas of others before you make a decision. There is a lady in the Quran, she's the only queen that's mentioned in the Quran. Her name is Balqis, Malikat Saba. She was a lady who ruled modern day Yemen. Some narrations tell us, like Bihar al-Anwar for Allama Majlisi, that she had around 12,000 generals in her state. And under each general, there were thousands of soldiers. So she had a big kingdom. And Prophet Sulaiman sent her a message and invited her. You know the rest of the story. But what did this lady do with empathy when she received the invitation of Sulaiman alayhi salam? Again, Fatima, the lady of Saba. This is the comparison from a Quranic perspective that we need to make. وَعْلَمُوا أَنِّي Fatima, in her well-known sermon. Sayyidah Fatima says, know that I am Fatima. Know who I am. So who is Malikat Saba that the Quran mentions? How did she live? How did she respond to the message of Sulaiman? And she received it. She didn't say, oh, because I'm the queen, I'm the leader, I'll just make the decision on my own. The Quran mentions, give me one gentle salawat. She says in the well-known ayah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. She receives the message from Sulaiman. قالت يا أيها الملأ أفتوني في أمري. Tell me, what should I do? I just received this message from Sulaiman. She went to her generals, she went to the people in her committee, in her government. She said, أفتوني في أمري ما كنت قاطعة أمرا حتى تشهدون. I will not make a decision until you have a say. And then they said to her, you have the say, we have the power, you are wise, you can make the call. What is she teaching us in this example that the Quran mentions? In your family, if you want to one day go out to a restaurant, try to ask your kids, try to ask your siblings, where would you like to go tonight? Some kids may like, for example, chicken burgers, and they want to go to a takeaway shop. I'm not going to mention examples here so that I'm not biased of businesses in our community. Others may say, no, I don't feel like having chicken burgers tonight, I want to have Afghan food. How much time do we give our kids to have a say in these kind of simple social situations in life? Give them an opportunity to choose. This is how we build character. So this is called empathy. Number one, privilege. Number two, self-awareness. And number three, empathy. Fatima Al-Zahra, salamullahi alayha, also exercised empathy in sallallahu alayhi wa alihi in Mecca would come back home feeling sad, feeling heartbroken. She was the one who would clean his hair. The Meccans would throw rubbish and filth on the Prophet's head. Fatima was the one who would take the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She would hug him, she would clean him, she would take care of him until she became the mother of her father. She spent 8 years with her father in Mecca, showing empathy when everyone else was against him. And then she migrated to Medina. And in Medina, in the battle, after the battle of Uhud and during the battle of Uhud, she was helping in nursing the wounds of the Muslims. She was helping. She wasn't just sitting at home. And then after that, she was teaching Fidda, her personal assistant, and elevating her. She was taking care of Zainab, Al-Hassan, Al-Hussein, family, her children. And then towards the end of her life, she became an ally of Ali ibn Abi Talib when she stood up respectfully and she practiced empathy towards her husband and towards the human right of Ali ibn Abi Talib, not just the divine appointment, the human right. In the mosque of Medina, and she gave that powerful sermon. My dear brothers and sisters, let's learn from Fatima. Let's learn who we are, what our society is, what are the issues and the problems. Let's go back to Fatima, because as Shaheed Dr. Ali Shariati described her, Fatima is Fatima. This is Fatima salamullahi alayha. She taught us that until the lion learns how to write the history of the hunt, will always glorify the hunters. If we don't take the initiative, if we don't share our vision, and we don't voice our message in society, in our family, we will not feel recognized. May Allah bless us all to empower our community and inspire everyone like Fatima salamullahi alayha. Assalamu alayki ya Sayyidati Nisa al-Alameen, ya Fatima Al-Zahra, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. ولا جعله الله آخر العهد منا لزيارتكم. May Allah not make this occasion the only and the last where we pay our tribute to this holy lady and all the imams and the prophets of Allah. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على رسوله محمد وآله الطاهرين.